not getting that message of critical thought at the age that they need it, because if you can get past that age and still think in this way, that's what continues religious belief into adulthood. And people say that religion doesn't have any consequence, and
this is a pretty clear consequence to me. It seems.
It's really depressing.
Hi, it's Anthony Magnabosco, and I'm 99% sure that you're watching Atheist Edge.
Hi, welcome to Atheist Edge. I'm Courtney here with Owen.
Howdy.
Yay! So we are going to comment on a video that is taken from an Oprah show episode.
It seems like these kids are just regurgitating Bible verses. I want to know if you really understand what it is that you are preaching.
That will be linked in the description, so you can go watch that if you would like. It is very disturbing, I warn you. And we just watched it, and we're freshly horrified, I think.
Therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation.
Owen, first thoughts?
So one of the problems I think with fundamentalist religion is the messaging to children. I think children are programmed evolutionarily to follow the examples set by their elders, by their parents, and I think that's there's evolutionary benefit to that. And I think what we're seeing here is that contorted into an awful direction. And I think please go watch the clip. I think what I saw was a young man imitating behavior without any idea of the content of what he was saying. He was simply repeating behavior, and frankly repeating it in a nearly offensive way.
A very offensive way, yeah. Because there's a point where there was a very good question raised by the audience that, can you tell us what this passage means, or what you're doing means? I'll let you do that, Jim.
And he says, I can't really. It's very hard to do that.
Duffy, do you understand what you just said? Could you put into your own words what you just said?
Yeah, I know what it means, but I just can't.
Please let him speak. Yes.
Means well, I know what it means, but it's just hard to understand.
And yet he had just stood up and yelled at the top of his lungs this message.
Yeah.
So tell me, Courtney, and I'm curious because you have professional training in psychology. When you look at the behavior of this young man, do you see something bordering on child abuse?
Well, it's such a controversial thing to call this child abuse. I do think that it's definitely brainwashing. It's just really unfortunate that this is the reality that he lives in, that something can be taken however you want to interpret it. And I remember being this kid, when I was a believer, I was very much this. I felt like I was someone who understood the message of God, and I spent a long time talking to adults, and they spent a long time admiring me so much for understanding the truth. And it took me a long time as an adult to get my father to understand that when he spoke about God, it's okay that it's his truth, but to say that it's the truth is not accurate because it's not mine. And that was really difficult for him to understand, and I think it's been very disappointing for my parents' friends that I grew up with to accept that this is now who I am and what I vehemently believe and fight for. The seeking of real knowledge and the seeking for actual truth and actual morality is something that's really important.
What I see here is a father using his son as a prop for the purposes of evangelism. It is a gimmick. I find it abhorrent. If you want to spread this message, if you want to go stand on a street corner and you want to capture people's attention, and you want to be the guy praying out loud in public, in spite of the fact that Jesus says not to do that on a number of occasions, great. Using your child as a prop to go achieve that end is vile. And I find that teaching your child that this is behavior to emulate is abusive. That's you're a psychologist. You can disagree with me on that, but I agree with that. It sickens me to see this.
Yeah, and so the other thing is that it's teaching him the antithesis of critical thought.
That's exactly right.
And that's a very, very dangerous path to bring children down, because even after he's kind of past the age of reason. He's like, I think he's past 7, right?
Yeah.
I've heard it 7, I've heard it 12 years old, but he seemed kind of an older kid. And I see that in my clients. I work with children from the ages of 7 to 17. And I see that, and as a clinician, I'm definitely not allowed, and I shouldn't impose my ideas on religion to them. I just have to relay back what's valuable to them and try to find something positive. But I have children with depression who gain something positive from their belief in God, and I'm not legally allowed to comment on that, and I really shouldn't. So people, sure. It's a fine line between teaching critical thought and allowing people to, find safety from their depression in any way that they can.
That's a great point. When I'm looking at this, I'm seeing the people in the audience posing questions to the young man, and rather than letting the young man respond, I'm seeing the father step in and give Bible verses in response, rather than allowing the child to formulate his premises and reach a conclusion, which is what critical thought would be.
Yeah, he's a reflection of his father's
Right,
ideas.
I see exactly the opposite of critical thought here. So there's someone in the audience with his hand raised. Do we...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the good-looking one in the back. Okay, the Jews say it's age 13. That's a bat mitzvah or a bar mitzvah, right?
Okay.
The light bulb came on for me at age 8, which I think is fairly early. I was reading the Children's Living Bible at age 4. I was kicked out of Vacation Bible School at age 8. I think that's fairly early, but the light bulb comes on at different ages. But it's usually between maybe 8-ish to 13-ish.
Right. But the point that I think I was making about passing the age of reason is not getting that message of critical thought at the age that they need it, because if you can get past that age and still think in this way, that's what continues religious belief into adulthood. And people say that religion doesn't have any consequence, and
this is a pretty clear consequence to me, it seems.
It's really depressing. Yeah. And I'm the first to say that, there's kind of a controversial idea that I embrace, that, religion isn't always harmful in every context for every person.
Only when it's,
But it is a direct attack on the virtues of critical thought, and it's faith as a virtue, which is not good.
So I respect your position and your professional training in the subject matter. But I would argue conversely, and I'm on record as saying so here on your channel, that I believe Christianity is not only false but harmful. And one of the 12 or 14 reasons that Rex and I give for making that argument is precisely the messaging to children and the modeling of behavior to children, and I see that manifest here. I'm willing to agree to disagree on that. But I think Christianity is not just false but harmful.
I agree that it is harmful. It's just that there's a narrative that it's always harmful in every context for every person.
I see what
you're saying. So what I'm saying is that some people live their entire lives and die with their religious belief not harming themselves or anyone else, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. But there are degrees of harm in really anything, and religion definitely has that.
Yeah. I remember what I was going to say now. Yeah. It's kind of a corollary, but it might apply. But what are your all's views on that kid that had the NDE, the near-death experience? Unfortunately, his last name was Malarkey, which is ironic. But and then he recanted later. But do you feel like his parents had to have coached him, right?
Heaven is Real, the book, right? So, go ahead. I'd love to know what you think about it.
Not even his parents don't even need to have coached him. It's about the religious belief being the lens that you see your experience through.
And that belief
so-
is pervasive. It's all around us.
Right.
You don't have to get it from your parents. You get it
Yeah,
from...
yeah.
Right.
So if you're indoctrinated, honestly, then that influence has an effect on everything around you and the way that you perceive your experience.
And I don't think there's any doubt that the young man that you're talking about with the book was coached and encouraged. That there can be no doubt that all of the adults around him coached him and encouraged him to persist in this ultimately what was a falsehood.
Right, and his experience, the only reason it's specific to his religion is because that's where he started from, and so if he was in a different religion, then he would contribute to that God, and it doesn't make either of those claims true.
He was clinically dead for 5 days. When little Corey came to, his parents and his doctors were shocked when he talked about his time.
I got to play with everybody, all my old family, and a baseball player named Babe Ruth.
Yeah. You got to meet Babe Ruth?
Yeah. And a man with a funny mustache named Hitler, and a nice lady named Mother Teresa.
Hold on a second. Did you say you met Hitler in heaven?
It's Adolf Hitler. And he had a funny mustache, and he talked funny.
No, honey, that can't be right. There was no Hitler there.
That's not in the book.
Right, yeah. So there's two things that I would say about near-death experience. For one thing, it's already been said by a lot of people that the experience that your brain has in a near-death experience is your brain on drugs. Your brain having chemicals flooding and influencing what you perceive. The other thing is the way that our memory works is not like a video camera. Our memory reconstructs what we see and is informed by our emotional state. It's informed by where we are at when we are remembering it, when we recall back. Yeah. And so there's a reason that that eyewitness account is way less than is really badly. It's really a bad use of evidence. Yeah. Because it's not evidence.
This right here is Courtney dropping a little bit of modern science on the YouTube channel.
That's good.
Oh, yeah. It's good shit.
So anything else we want to say about that video?
No, it kind of makes me wonder what the other videos are going to say.
Yeah, so the last thing that worries me about that video is it seemed that the audience was sort of berating the child. They weren't like berating the adults for brainwashing their children into believing this. They were berating the children and yelling at them and saying like, well, do you know what that means? And it's a valid question, but also these are children that...
The anger was misdirected.
Well, yes, and it's not the child's fault that this is the world that they live in, and I think that it's also... They were using critical thought and real questions as an attack. Which there's a better way to go about that. There's a calmer, more respectful way to go about disagreeing with someone or asking someone to really think about what they're saying. And so it kind of gave critical thought and like atheism as a whole sort of a negative image and a bad name.
Wow, that's a very astute observation.
Thank you.
All right.
So thanks for watching. We're probably going to continue doing this. Me and Owen, we're going to break them up into different videos. Yeah. And so keep having your critical thought of religion come in a approachable and respectful package, because the people who believe these things, they are victims of the ideas, and so it's very important to respect that they believe this and it's not their fault, and to show respect when you can.
Freedom from religion is a gift we can give.
Yes.
Respectfully.
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, welcome to Atheist Edge. Blah.